To speak,
the question is that the report of the Local Government Environment Committee on the 2010-11 financial review of Energy Efficiency and Conservation Authority being noted.
Mr Chair.
Gareth Hughes.
Kia ora, Mr Chair. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Kia ora. I rise to take a call on the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Authority. Mr Chair, I want to talk about the good, the bad and the ugly in this Crown entity. But first I'd like to acknowledge former Green Party co-leader Jeanette Fitzsimons. In 2000 it was Jeanette's Energy Efficiency and Conservation Member Bill that passed into law, the first ever piece of legislation in our country's history to explicitly address climate change. So while we're having huge debates across the country about electricity production, what we often forget is that the most effective way we could be reducing the need for electricity production is just simply to use the electricity we have already just more efficiently. We'd like to acknowledge all the hard work done by those ECA officials. So to begin with, Mr Chair, the good. It's good to be working with the government through a Memorandum of Understanding on the Warm Up New Zealand Heat Smart programme. This $347 million budget has recently been extended, the amount of homes we're going to insulate, to 230,000. This is absolutely massive. It's making a real difference to New Zealand families, a real difference to kids' health and a real difference to the economy. I know economic benefits have recently been estimated at $1.2 billion. Those 150,000 homes that have been done to date, if you laid the bats end on end across the country, it would stretch from Auckland to Invercargill and back to Auckland and then some. So it's a huge victory. It's good to be working with the government, but now I guess it's important to touch on the bad in this Crown entity as well. Because in Budget 2012, we saw two very important budget lines cut under the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Authority. The first was the biofuel subsidies. This government drastically changed the good mandate scheme that the Labour government formerly had, put in a woefully inadequate biofuel subsidy grant scheme of 50 cents, absolutely inadequate. The take-up was pitifully poor, and now the government scrapped it. We can only hope that the government now returns to a mandate scheme if they actually want to see biofuels being used in New Zealand. It's a huge issue because, look, we're importing $8 billion in oil from some pretty unsavoury countries around the world. It's a huge strategic economic risk, but the government's not doing anything about it. They're scrapping the biofuel grant. They're not doing enough to promote electric vehicles. They're definitely not doing enough for public transport. You know, New Zealand could actually be self-sustainable in liquid and other transport fuels using sustainable biofuels from wood waste, other agricultural byproducts, electric vehicles and a greater investment in public transport. The other bad in the budget was the scrapping of the solar hot water grant scheme. Again, a scheme that was doing a pretty good job. We would have liked to have actually seen it enhanced. We should have seen the scheme enhanced to include photovoltaic solar panels. This has dropped about 50% in price in the last 18 months. We could be producing a huge amount of electricity from the energy wasted just hitting our roofs if the government supported it, included maybe a grant scheme, supported with low interest loans, maybe helped facilitate a council rates payback scheme, which has worked pretty effectively in Nelson. And then you've got the ugly. We've seen the good, we've seen the bad, and now the ugly. Now, ECA is struggling because the government's entire focus when it comes to energy issues, and you just need to look at the energy strategy, is to drill it, to mine it, frack it. It's the only plan the government's got. In fact, the Minister last week, in response to my questions, said deliberately he wants to stimulate the risky deep-sea oil industry, despite what we know there's going to be hardly any jobs for New Zealanders, hardly any taxes, hardly any royalties, and the profits are going to go offshore. So instead of a Crown Petroleum and Minerals, why doesn't this government consider a Crown Renewable Energy Agency? Maybe under ECA, they're doing some pretty good work in conservation, but why don't we have a government department which is actually focusing on rolling out renewable energy? We could be building tens of thousands of green jobs. We could actually be boosting the economy in a sustainable fashion. We could actually be leveraging our advantages. Just look at the Pure Advantage report. $6 trillion industry. Yep, we're getting there, but what we're seeing under this government is all the focus not on getting it to 90%, which is their target, another one of the national government's targets, which they're doing nothing about achieving. Instead, they're sitting on their hands, subsidising the oil industry, subsidising the carbon polluters, $1.5 billion in their amended emissions trading scheme in the last financial year. So we see this government sitting on their hands, but actively promoting risky deep-sea drilling. The sad thing is, Mr Speaker, we're missing that green race, which Pure Advantage pointed to. We could be doing so much better, not only making our kids healthier through a good insulation scheme, but also providing prosperity and lifting them out of poverty. Kia ora.
The question is that the report of the Local Government Environment Committee on the 2010-11 Financial Review of Energy Efficiency and Conservation Authority be noted. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. I understand the next entity members wish to debate is Commerce Commission. The question is that the report of the Commerce Committee on the 2010-11 Financial Review of Commerce Commission be noted. The Honourable Craig Foss.
Mr. Chair.